Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
Hey, I'm Kim Holderness.
And I'm Ben Holderness.
We host the Holderness Family Podcast every Tuesday.
You may know us from the silly videos that we make online.
Or a book about marriage called Everybody Fights.
Or as winners of season 33 of The Amazing Race.
Still can't believe that happened. Listen, we do a lot of stuff, but our podcast is our most favorite thing.
Yeah, because every week we get to sit down face to face, talk to each other about marriage, family, mental health, or just anything that we want to know more about.
Sometimes we have expert interviews, sometimes it's just us, but our goal is to bring some joy and laughter into your life every week.
Our other goal is that maybe you will learn something as well.
Right, so search the Holderness Family Podcast and check out our most recent episodes. We have one about staying organized with creators of the Home Edit.
And one about being diagnosed with ADHD as an adult.
We hope you'll join us.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.
Hi, it's Dave here. This is my wife, Kathy.
Hello.
This is the Cinemile, the podcast where we walk home from the movies and occasionally the movies get cancelled and put to exclusive streaming services. And then we just watch them on St. Stephen's Day. You know, that kind of thing.
And sometimes...
Or, sorry, Boxing Day if it's the UK. We call it St. Stephen's Day in Ireland.
And sometimes that's actually a whole year of movie viewing. Everything's been cancelled. So here we are.
Everything is cancelled.
About to watch Soul, which is a movie we've been so excited to see. It looks incredible from the trailers, and I think
looks like classic Pixar.
Devastating that the first black lead of a Pixar movie, which in itself is shocking that that's only happening now, is being sent to a streaming service.
Yeah,
it's so disappointing. This movie should have opened in cinemas. I'm gutted it's on Disney Plus. No shade to Disney Plus, a great service, but I want to see this movie in the cinema.
Is it available in the cinemas as well? Not that we can go because
the cinemas are all closed.
We're in lockdown. We're in tier 4 lockdown here in the UK.
Cinemas are closed, so it's like I feel like when we watched Coco in the cinema and we were just blown away by the depiction of the culture and everything we saw on screen was so beautiful, and that's what I want from this movie.
But then arguably this will get a bigger audience.
I know, but I want to see it on I want to see it on a big screen.
Same. I know. I'm with you. I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm just.
And it is just rubbish that the film with the first black lead is being released on a streaming service and not where it should be, which is in the cinema.
Yeah.
But other than that, we're really excited, and we're going to try and watch it with our 3-year-old Oscar, see what he thinks of it. It's funny with some Pixar movies. He loves them, and some he'll completely tune out, so we don't know how this one's going to go.
I will say, all in all, considering the year that's in it, and that normally this day, Stephen's Day, Boxing Day, is one of the biggest in the year for cinema, because a lot of people like to go for a long walk, which we're doing now, and a trip to the cinema.
I myself would love a trip to the cinema right now.
Yeah. Considering that I think that we have a new Pixar movie and it's available in our homes, there's a positive element of convenience around that.
I'm thrilled it's not just delayed.
I'm happy about that.
Like, I'm thrilled they haven't, just done a James Bond and cancelled it completely. Not that I want to watch James Bond, but no, they're doing the right thing. Bring it out. Like, it can't just sit on the shelf forever. So yeah, excited.
Yeah, and so apologies for the wind as well. It's very windy here today.
Yeah.
So I don't know. What do you know about this movie? Or I've only seen a trailer. I tried to keep myself away from too much.
Same. I've seen the trailer.
It's kind of Inside Outy kind of vibe.
It looks to me from a trailer like Inside Out meets Coco, but who knows? I think we should just go watch it. Come back and talk about it.
All right.
But I want it to be good. I want it to be really, really good, because when Pixar gets it right, like, no one's better than them, and I'm in the mood for a nice, heartwarming movie.
Yeah.
With amazing music, which I'm expecting from this movie too.
All right, so see you after the Pixar Soul. Soul.
Music is all I think about. From the moment I wake up in the morning to the moment I fall asleep at night, I was born to play. It's my reason for living. Hello? What the? Wow! Oh my goodness! Help! I'm not done! Oh my goodness! They're sweet. They can't talk. There's a soul missing. Is this heaven?
No.
Is it H-E double hockey sticks?
Hell? Quiet coyotes. No, it's the great before. This is where new souls get their personalities, quirks, and interests before they go to Earth. Here we are.
Wait!
Don't worry, you can't crush a soul here. That's what life on Earth is for.
Hi, we're back. We are out for a walk again on this windy day. And we watched Pixar Soul of an afternoon. We watched Soul with
Why
our
do you keep calling it
3-year-old. I
Pixar
don't know.
Soul?
Help me.
It's called Soul.
I've forgotten how to podcast.
It's because it says Pixar Soul all over Disney Plus. That's why.
Yeah.
Soul.
We watched Soul.
Yeah.
Mind in there. There's a tractor coming.
There's a tractor coming.
So, Kathy, what did you see? This is the problem. Not only with this whole streaming thing and watching new movies at home thing. There's a lot of problems associated with that. But one big problem I have is that our podcast is kind of ruined. Not only because we're not able to walk home from the cinema, but also the part of the delight for me of doing our podcast is the coming out and genuinely most of the time not knowing what you've thought of a movie.
Yeah,
and then
same.
finding out like with everyone who's listening and often being surprised. And sometimes I'm able to tell from your frustrated body language. But when it's not the same at home because admittedly we had to watch this in 2 parts. And you're taking breaks.
3-year-olds.
This movie don't work on 3-year-olds.
It was really interesting, right, watching with Oscar because he loved it when it was in the real world, and as soon as it went into the 2D Soul world, he was jumping on the sofa, he was climbing on her laps.
Which is interesting. I would have assumed it would have been the other way around. But
It's an interesting one and we'll get to it, but the visuals for me were very much more stimulating in the real world, and he was following the character and he was excited to be watching a new movie with us. Like, it was kind of a big deal because we don't often all sit down together to watch a new movie, because as much as we love Oscar, we don't really like sitting down to watch Paw Patrol with him. So I found it so interesting how quickly he tuned out. So anyway, we ended up watching it in 2 parts on an iPad. Is that any way to be watching a movie? And so let's preface this review with we did not watch it the right way. However, we watched it how most of you probably watched it, which is on a small screen with some pausing. Yeah. So flat out, we hate that we watched it that way. We'll get that out of the way now. We shouldn't have watched it in that way.
Yeah, I hated it as well.
He wasn't...
We didn't have access to it on the TV at the time.
I think that basically I'd be very surprised if any kid under the age of 10 was into this movie, just based on how lofty the concepts were and how interesting and very cleverly done the 2D animation was of the Soul world. But I just don't know. I don't see it. I'd love to know if any of your kids liked it. Just
to jump in there, the world of, first of all, no spoilers yet. If you're first time listening to this, welcome. We'll do a spoiler street section later, but no spoilers yet. But broadly speaking, the world of the afterlife, or the sort of in-between life that you're describing, that's not 2D. That was 3D.
Sorry, but all the characters were 2D.
Oh yes, I loved that idea. The Jerrys and Terrys, the gatekeepers of the souls, were illustrated in 2D, which is a really interesting concept. And let's talk more.
We'll talk about that in a bit. But anyway, my overall thoughts of the movie, all that aside, is I loved the character of Joe. I loved how they made New York. I felt like I was in New York. I felt a bit lonely.
Incredibly real looking.
It looked like New York shot in real sunlight. It was incredible, and it made me really lonely for going on holidays, being in a bustling place, all the noise. It felt in very stark contrast to our current lives, and I thought it was incredible. And we said it is the first black lead in a Pixar movie, and we all know that in all screen the overrepresentation of white people is a chronic problem. And our son, who is white and has lived a very sheltered life this year, as most children have, so he's been rarely exposed to anyone outside his immediate family unit, which is a white family unit. he said it was incredible. We were watching it together, and Joe was playing the piano, and Oscar says, "Why are his hands brown?" And we said, because some people have brown hands, some people have white hands. And then Oscar said, "Oh, I have pink hands." And then we kept watching it again. Oscar's hands, in fact, did look very pink in that moment. But I just thought, oh my God, like, this is just a little 3-year-old boy who's lived a very sheltered life the last year, so doesn't remember all the variety of people he used to see in 2019. And yeah, I thought that was actually a very profound moment and a little interesting, like, sweet moment with our child. And I thought, this is exactly why...
It shows why it's important to have
representation is incredibly important. And yeah, so that was like I found that a lovely moment with Oscar. But I loved all that stuff, right? And then I thought it was incredible. I loved Joe as a musician. I loved him as a teacher. I loved his audition scene for his big break.
His passion.
His music. Like, I mean, I think Jamie Foxx was great casting for him. And I thought, like, his piano playing was exquisite. As a very mediocre pianist, I was blown away by the piano. But for me, that's the world I wanted to stay in. And I actually didn't really enjoy the afterlife world at all. I found it very jarring. And I just didn't like how they animated it, albeit I can see creatively it's very clever what they did. I found it very hollow. I wanted to get back to the real world, follow Joe the musician, and watch all of that. And it almost felt like two different movies to me. And I have to say, I was very disappointed to lose the lovely world filled with these incredible black characters and go to this pastel world with kind of souls.
With Caspers.
Who had no race. I just felt really disappointed by it. I thought, why are you going to all the effort of making this incredible world with this black musician and jazz?
Isn't that kind of a nice point, though, that our souls don't have race? That doesn't matter.
No, but I didn't like any of the soul stuff because, well, I don't care. I've seen Inside Out already. Like, this is just Inside Out 2.0. This other stuff. I want to see Joe's incredible world. I want to follow a jazz musician. I don't need to see Inside Out again. I've seen that. I loved that. And then I was just surprised to find that, like, the other main character in the movie was Tina Fey, who's a white woman. And for a lot of the movie, actually, her voice is the predominant voice. I was surprised to find that too. No shade on Tina Fey. I think she's great. I thought she did a brilliant job as a voice actress. I just was like, what's going on here? You know, like when we watched Coco, I felt truly immersed in that culture. And it was like we were watching a Mexican film with Mexican characters, and I loved that. Like when we watched Moana, we were totally immersed in that culture. I loved that. I just felt like in this movie, I wasn't there to watch Tina Fey in a pastel world talking. I was there to watch Joe in his world. So I have to say, disappointed by that creative choice, albeit I think Tina Fey did a great job. So every moment on earth with Joe I loved, and all the other moments I didn't love, and that's all I'll say till we get to spoiler street.
Okay. Well, back to my earlier point, like, I kind of know all this because it was obvious because we couldn't help talking about it a bit.
You can't help talking as you pause it while your child climbs on your lap.
I know, so I'm kind of missing out on this surprise element. But look, that said, I mean, you already kind of know that I kind of feel a bit similarly. But I really like this movie. I think it's very good. And I think there's a lot to really like, and there's a lot to admire about it, but I didn't love it, and I think that's what's interesting to pick apart for me, is why I didn't love this movie, and I didn't engage with it emotionally.
Same, no emotion. Like, usually we are bawling at a Pixar movie.
Yeah, like Coco got me good, Onward got me good, which surprised me because they both came out this year, this and Onward, and of the two to look at, I would have said Soul is... I would have veered towards Soul. This is going to be the one that's going to get me.
Now, I still prefer Soul to Onward, but I agree Onward is more emotionally satisfying.
Yeah, and now Onward is playing with very familiar tropes of grief and longing, and you know, but they're very recognisable human emotions.
Yeah, this movie was very complex, like philosophically and intellectually.
Yes, which is to its credit, and I think... You
need to watch it again, I think.
Yeah, I kind of would like to watch it again.
Yeah. And
I think, again, credit to the movie for, like, just attempting to tackle these things and have a kind of a point of view about life and the purpose of life, like very lofty ideals, and like you said, quite philosophical and introspective. And I admire that. And ultimately, I think the message that you're left with is uplifting, and left me kind of satisfied and feeling good. However, it's nothing.
Even leave me that satisfied.
But it's nothing kind of new or exciting. And that's the other thing I felt like was interesting about this movie. Despite the fact that the plot is constantly surprised me.
Yeah, the plot. We never predicted where the plot would go.
No, and the trailer doesn't give you much, actually. So the plot kept surprising me, and I like being surprised. So I was like, massive kudos to them. Like, I didn't predict where most of this was going until maybe the very end. But on the flip side, it kind of felt like it kind of didn't know what it was, and it was hopping and skipping around a lot. And what that kind of, to your point, felt jarring, because it's set between two different locations.
Well, do you know?
And then it becomes a different movie kind of halfway through.
Do you know it was co-directed? But it was two directors, one of whom was black.
I thought it was just Pete Docter.
No, there was then a co-director, and he came in later in the process, and he basically said it was a mess when he came in.
Oh, really?
And it's a bit like we
oh
often
my God,
find
it's windy. I'm
very
sorry.
windy. We often find this with projects like this. I feel like you can feel its conflicting minds or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just it was jarringly all over the place. I just was like, bring me back to New York. I want to be in New York. Stop shifting me out of it into this weird other thing that is, I don't know what it is.
Well, let's go into the detail of that in Spoiler Street in a second. But just to sort of draw a line under my feelings about it, I think it is really good. I want to watch it again, but I didn't love it, and I didn't, and I'm disappointed that I didn't get that experience. But that just stood in a big puddle. So for me, it's like the problem is if I detach myself from my expectations and from my perceptions and hopes for Pixar as a whole, I can acknowledge that my bar is so incredibly high for this studio. So
but our bar shouldn't be that high because they've let us down a few times now.
Yeah, I know. They certainly are not at their heyday, which Pete Docter was a part of, which is, for me, Up, Wall-E, that kind of, that run.
I can't believe he made Up. The guy who made... but the person who made the opening montage of Up made this movie. And talk about the variance in emotional impact.
Yeah, and that's
when this movie ended, we both turned to each other and went, huh? We literally said, huh?
It just felt like it felt. We didn't get the gut punch. You don't get the Up gut punch. You don't get the Coco gut punch.
No.
Which you could say is perhaps, if I'm being forgiving, I would say, perhaps those things are just obvious emotional manipulation, and that this movie is trying to tackle something more. But however,
you can have both.
You can have both.
Emotional manipulation.
Exactly. And there were a few moments in this movie where I felt like I should be getting that. And let's go into spoilers.
I think we should go to spoilers. Now, this is not us not recommending the movie, by the way.
Yeah,
I really recommend you watch it. There's loads to take in.
It's gorgeous. It's clever. It's also funny.
Yeah, it is funny.
I laughed quite a few times. I like the characters, but it's like it's just not up there with what I know this studio can achieve. And I think the fact that you've said it's kind of had two different directors, and it's just they didn't quite nail it. And often it's
almost like they were trying to tackle so much, and it's such a difficult thing to tackle, and they just got bogged down in it all. And it's like, I know I always get this expression wrong. Is it like
they can't see the the trees for the forest?
The trees from the forest.
What were you going to say?
The wood from the trees. They can't see. It's like at its
funny,
core.
because we're actually in a wood right now. We wandered into it.
At its core, what's the movie about? And I don't think I could actually tell you.
What's it all about?
Whereas if you ask me what Coco's about, I can tell you what Coco's about.
Tell me what Coco's about.
It's about a young boy who loves music and feels disconnected from his family, and he wants to kind of reconnect with his family whilst continuing his journey in loving music. That's kind of how I describe it. I don't actually know how to do a synopsis for Soul.
Okay, well, let's go into Spoiler Street and you can give it a go. Right, so spoilers now for Pixar's Soul. So you've got a 5-second warning now. 3, 2, 1. You've better have gone and watched it and streamed it by now. Come on, guys, it's readily available.
Like us, you can have a 7-hour gap between the first half of this movie and the second half of this movie. Which 100% definitely killed the momentum, and we admit that.
I know, and I think perhaps we would have... Perhaps we would have been a bit more immersed in it. This is the problem.
Yeah.
If we had been sitting in a room for 2 hours, perhaps we might have felt closer to that emotional engagement. I suspect not entirely.
I suspect we would have enjoyed it more.
Probably would have enjoyed it a bit more.
Oscar climbing on my lap and jumping up and down on the sofa next to me
didn't help.
Did not help. And then us eventually pausing it because he was crying.
Yeah.
So what is the synopsis of this movie? So Joe, a music teacher who has been trying to get his big break for a long time and is dissatisfied with his career, gets an incredible break with this wonderful saxophonist. He plays this incredible jazz solo on the piano in an audition,
and he enters the zone. I
zone.
loved the idea of this is an actual physical place.
Yeah, I thought that was brilliant.
In the sort of in-between worlds that people enter. That's
and he enters the zone.
Incredible concept.
Nails the audition, basically gets hired, and then immediately dies.
Yeah.
And I just don't understand why.
Wait,
why are we watching a movie where our protagonist, in this incredibly rich world that I absolutely loved, they've gone to all the effort of drawing it all out, and then within 10 minutes he dies and goes to another world after fulfilling his dream.
Why is your problem with that? That's the hook. That's the concept of this movie. Sorry, Kathy. If you take that away, it's just. You're just watching an animated movie about a musician.
That's what I wanted to watch.
I just wanted to watch that.
I wanted to watch Joe's journey, and then
But sorry, he literally goes on a journey.
And it was funny.
But that's they
played with us.
I disagree with you. I think that's an incredible conflict that a person who is on the cusp of getting everything they've ever wanted, and then it's taken away very tragically. And that is the driving force of Joe throughout this whole movie is incredible. And they acknowledge the fact that he's trying to get back to Earth. And Tina Fey's character 22, who I did enjoy, says at one point, I'm inspired by your I'm going to paraphrase it, but I'm inspired by your commitment to get back to your completely terrible life.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
It was all funny. I'm just saying, I expressed as a viewer, I was very disappointed when that happened. And then I did enjoy him trying to get back to his life, and he kind of came to the realization that he hadn't achieved anything he wanted to do with his life, and kind of simultaneously he's trying to mentor 22. And they did make a joke about why does your voice sound like an annoying white woman? That was funny.
How interesting. Sorry, just on that note, that moment was really interesting when you go into the whatever it was, the Hall of Memories or something, or I forget what they called it, when he's pretending to be this very accomplished psychologist, and then we're seeing that person's achievements spread out in front of him in 22, and then he puts his hand over the gijmigog, and it becomes his achievements, and then it's very him sitting in front of the TV.
Yeah, that was
and
sad.
A lot of, that hit me. I was like, wow, if you got to that moment and it was like, what did I achieve? But what I really liked...
Imagine how much TV is in our montage.
I know, it'd just be like, I was watching this movie and then going out for a windy walk. It's pretty much all we've accomplished.
Look, there's so much to get into in the movie, and I kind of don't even want to get into all the plot points other than I kept
but then why
waiting.
are we here?
Because I kept waiting for what is the message of the movie, and I thought it was interesting the way that on the soul stuff it was they were trying to differentiate. They were saying your soul doesn't have a purpose, as in you have to be a pianist or you have to be a doctor.
Your spark is not your purpose.
Your spark is not your purpose. But then they never kind of told us what the spark. What was the spark? Was it that you wanted to live?
No.
I'm left confused by what the movie was trying. Totally got that it's not your purpose thing. Joe, your purpose in life isn't to play the piano, and I thought it was going to come around to the fact that Joe's purpose in life was actually to inspire children through his teaching, and he inspired 22. But then I don't know, none of that kind of came together. I don't actually know what Joe's spark was.
Well, no, you know what his spark was. You don't know what his purpose was. That's what you're saying.
But what was his spark?
His spark was music.
But they were saying a spark isn't a thing.
No, they were saying your spark is No, but your spark is not your purpose. That's what Jerry said to him. And that's a really interesting line.
Okay, but what was his purpose then? Because at the end, all he said is, I'm going to live every day like it's my last.
That's the thing. There is no... The movie doesn't tell you explicitly, and I thought it was really clever and interesting. And the way I read this was I
wanted Joe to go back on Earth to make children's lives better.
Kathy, there's no... The point that I read from this was that nobody is given a purpose. No, not every individual soul has this is your purpose, this is your purpose, this is your purpose.
That's existentialism, you know that? Your existence precedes your essence. So you exist first, and then you're alive, and then your essence is created by you.
Oh, interesting. Okay, well there you go. You have the philosophy degree. If everyone didn't know that, Kathy actually has a philosophy degree.
The only thing I remember.
I'm surprised you didn't engage in this movie more then.
No, because I was show me Joe playing the piano and being in a band.
Okay, can I just answer this question then?
Yeah.
So Jerry didn't tell him this is your purpose, nor did he discover this is my purpose. What he discovered was the preciousness of life, and that he experienced that through 22 experiencing it for the first time.
Am I the only one with the whole movie was 22, the Taylor Swift song?
I don't know the Taylor Swift.
That's it, 22.
Okay. So you were the only one in this room. So that, I think that is quite life affirming. The whole, and I thought it was conveyed very very subtly and well, which is just those little moments of those little moments of just lying on I loved the childlike innocence of
I loved how 22 they did all that,
experiencing this life for the
he's
first
eating
time
pizza.
through this grown man's body.
He's eating. I loved all of that. He's eating pizza when he was in the cat. And 22 was in his body.
Yeah, the movie kind of comes alive.
That was really...
The Freaky Friday stuff was good.
As soon as they got back to Earth, I was with it.
Yeah.
It was
I'm with you.
I
thought I wanted more of that.
Interestingly, when they were in the so-called zone or afterlife, whatever the fuck it was, I zoned out.
Same.
And then as soon as it came back to New York, I was like, oh my God, this is incredible. I love meeting Joe's mom. I love meeting Joe's barber. I loved watching all the silliness of 22 trying to be Joe, and then actually 22 is meaningful conversations to people, and Joe's like, oh, I've only ever spoken to this person about jazz before.
Yeah, that's really good.
And
that
she's
was
like,
great.
why have we only ever spoken about jazz? He's like, because you never asked me anything about my life. And Joe realises that his fixation with jazz is actually made him a real dullard.
Which was another amazing thing that this movie presented in a throwaway line when we get that exposition scene when they're going through the zone and we meet the lost souls, and then Graham Norton, who we'll talk about in a minute,
oh my God,
his character Moonwalker,
I could not
or whatever it was,
that.
he says lost souls are, we get the funny illustration of somebody who's a stockbroker and they save the stockbroker and they come to life in the middle of the...
Yeah, that was funny.
That's an obvious lost soul. But what was interesting was that the movie presents that your spark and your passion, when you enter the zone and when you sort of commune between worlds, which is an amazing idea, if you focus on that too much, it becomes an obsession. And then you become a lost soul that way as well. And that's kind of what Joe is bordering on for this whole movie.
He's just chasing a high.
He's chasing something that doesn't
and when he
doesn't fulfill you. It's almost like a drug. And he's missed out the actual point of life.
But it is a drug. People are addicted to fame, celebrity.
Yeah.
When Joe finally gets on that stage and has the most incredible musical performance of his life, and after
it doesn't fulfill him.
He goes, what now? And she's like, now we go home and we do it tomorrow.
Sorry, that was
really good.
That's a brilliant moment.
Yeah.
And then those little scenes.
But again, that was a moment when we were back watching Joe living his life.
I know, yeah, I'm with you. And those scenes and and
then he's just on the subway
following
and he's so
the
depressed.
subway scene is so subtly done. So in fact the more I talk about this movie, the more I'm liking it and admiring it in retrospect. So I think again, this is my feeling is I think this is a really great movie with interesting ideas and is very accomplished, but I'm admiring it and liking it, but I'm not hitting it with my emotions. I'm that's very well done and very crafted, and it's making me think.
It's an interesting thing because a couple of people messaged us about it, saying that they loved the soul world.
Yeah, okay, let's talk about that, because you and I both thought it was pretty dull. Right? I think you kind of said, what did you say earlier? Pastel. I was a bit sort of I like that they made it sort of simple.
I actually, when we first got there, I enjoyed how they executed it. I did like the 2D kind of lines. I thought that was all quite cool. I enjoyed the voice actors. I genuinely enjoyed all of that. I just got bored when it went on. Like,
it's not interesting when
this
you have
extended...
the action scenes of this pirate ship with these sort of hippie marauders saving lost souls.
That was just so out of place.
That's not interesting.
And actually, I love Graham Norton, by the way, so it's no shade on Graham Norton, but I was like, why am I listening to Graham Norton driving a ship? That is not what I came to this movie for.
He's too recognisable for this role. And I agree.
It's not what we were there for.
No, and none of that, all that didn't really amount to much.
Never paid off.
Except delivering exposition and then providing a sort of a conduit for our for the climax of this movie.
Yeah,
i.e.
it was
Joe
unnecessary.
making the realization, then entering the zone, then finding this, then just so he can save 22's lost soul.
But we could have done all that from the first time we met Graham Norton when he explained that's the zone. Like, I didn't think we needed to revisit all that again, because the stuff that I thought was really fun was at the very beginning when we first, like, when Joe first is like supposed to be going up to heaven on this conveyor belt and he kind of falls off and ends up in the wrong place. I thought all that stuff was really funny, and I really enjoyed like how desperately he was trying to get back to Earth because he's just about to have his big break. And then the room where we meet all like the tutors of the souls, and we meet like
the
there's a
Academy
soul number 7 billion
and
trillion, and then number 22, because she's been through everyone. She's been through like Mother Teresa, Abraham Lincoln. It was so funny how they just kept showing us the people who had tried to tutor 22. So I loved all that stuff. I agree, as we talk about it, when you pinpoint on it, it really was just the unnecessary Graham Norton in a boat scene.
Yeah, that bit didn't land, and but I also felt like that's not it wasn't an interesting place.
No.
That sort of vast wasteland with lost souls wandering about.
It was kind of ugly. Again, preface this by we were watching it on an iPad, so maybe it would have looked cool on the big screen. But it was kind of ugly. I want to go back to like sunlit New York. I want to go back to the subway. I want to go back to like Joe in a smoky jazz club. Like, that was the beautiful. That's stuff I've never really seen in an animation.
That's photorealistic.
Yeah.
It was quite incredible, and I think Pixar have nailed that.
It was incredible.
I remember when we watched The Good Dinosaur a while ago, we said that there felt like a real clash between this photorealistic world and these really cartoony dinosaurs and animals.
Behind them, it looked real, like the grass and the sky and everything, and then the dinosaurs kind of looked like teddy bears.
That looked wrong. They were clashing. However, I feel like they found a really nice go-between here, where
they looked fake, except the saxophonist who was voiced by Angela Bassett. She looked real.
Yeah, but
the rest of them looked.
But they all have a cartoon vibe about them. But it worked.
Like
it didn't
Joe's body,
they didn't feel like they were clashing with their environment.
I love the way Joe was like really like long and lean and skinny, but then had like
little
this middle-aged spread.
Yeah.
So then when he goes to put on, and it was kind of cartoonish, like how skinny the rest of him was, and then he goes to put on the suit because he needs to look smart, and he's like, it still fits, and 22 just bends down and the whole thing split. Like, I just thought all that stuff was really funny. And then I absolutely adored the scene with Joe's mother, who was like a seamstress, or I couldn't quite tell if she owned she was a seamstress or owned a laundromat or something. Anyway, something to do with clothes. And Joe and her have this really frank discussion where she's like, take the teaching job. He's been finally offered a permanent job as well, of course. On the day he dies, he was just about to get a pension. And
why can't he have the permanent job and do these nightclub stuff?
Bit I didn't get.
Yeah.
Bit I didn't get. Like, you can be a permanent full-time teacher.
We have permanent jobs, and we moonlight as podcasters.
I mean, like, it would be probably tiring to play every night in a jazz club, and he probably has to go on tour and stuff. But I felt like he should have taken the job, because it wasn't like, oh, you want to be a musician but you have to take a job driving a digger. Like, you're teaching music, man, with a pension. That's actually pretty good. But I love the scene with his mother when she was like, he's like, but Dad was a musician and you supported him, and she's like, how do you think your dad lived like that? It's because I paid the bills through my business, and like, you've no one to pay your bills. And she's having a very frank conversation with him. And then he somehow wins her around because 22's in him, and 22 speaks differently than how he does.
That felt unearned to me.
I liked it though, because I just loved when she gave him a dad's suit.
I didn't understand why she suddenly, like, 22 gave a throwaway line about, I don't remember what it was, but it was one line seemed to convince her. And then she was just totally on board for the rest of the movie.
But I think it's because Joe normally is just a broken record, and because 22 was inside him. I just loved when he put on his dad's suit and he looked so handsome and all that stuff.
Those were the moments for me where I felt like this should be a big hitting emotional moment for me, and it's not landing. And those were
that was the most emotional
and then
moment.
I also thought I was going to get one with Connie, his student, who just kind of they dropped that plot halfway through. That didn't really feel resolved.
It's like Connie's brilliant, but she's conflicting, and then she just runs off, and 22 helps her. And I agree, that didn't. This is why I kept thinking it was going to come back, because we meet like the drummer of the band that hooks him up for this audition, and he's like, "Oh, you're the only reason like I went to school because I loved your band." And it's like, you kind of got glimmers of the fact that Joe was like this incredible teacher, and I wanted it to be like at the end, like I kind of had a notion, and obviously I've watched too many cheesy movies of like
he should be the teacher, kids, not the musician.
Exactly, and all the kids he's helped, whether they end up being musicians or just like the hard work and ethic he's taught them of learning an instrument, which is really difficult, is fruitful for them in later life. That's kind of where I thought it was going, and that's not to say it was interesting or that's where it should have gone, but I was waiting for something like that. But then at the very end, me too. The movie, like, Joe goes back to Earth, and it's just like, he
has a deep breath of fresh air.
He has a deep breath of fresh air, and the movie ended. And we're like, no, maybe there was a post-credit.
I kind of like the subtlety of that, though.
But it's way too subtle. Like, we're talking about a kids' movie being released on Christmas Day.
Well, like you said, I'm with you. Like you said, I don't know who's the audience for this. I don't know.
100% an adult audience.
You're right, but I feel like a 12-year-old plus maybe might take something away from this. But it's I can't.
And also, do you also think that like the music was so stunning? I loved it.
Yeah.
But there wasn't enough of it.
Yeah.
Like when I come away from, I keep talking about
the score
Coco.
is Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
But again, it wasn't like I didn't get to hear enough of it. So, I just.
Will we leave it there?
I should leave it there because clearly we both enjoyed loads of elements of it. I'd love to know what you guys thought of it.
I like it more. I like talking about it, which means
it's like a good philosophy book. It's interesting to talk about. It ain't interesting to read.
No, but it is. No, but it is interesting to watch, and I would happily watch it again.
Yeah,
and I think that's the thing. We're coming at this with what sounds like a bit of reticence about this movie, but it's largely just based in. Slight disappointment of our expectations weren't met, but this is still a very the fact that this movie was just made and produced, and it's about essentially aimed at a family or young audience with a subject matter of, like you said, existentialism,
but
and
with
it's
no
set
religion, which is interesting.
Yes, very interesting.
But
also set in a sort of jazz and black culture and music. So it's like I would never 20 years ago have said this is going to be one of the big hits.
But isn't
of the
it
year.
Interesting when you compare it to Coco, because Coco was also about death and souls and.
Yeah, they are quite similar. You're right. Yeah,
it's very similar, but Coco, in terms of a coherent film, is leagues above this
Coco
one.
just had that song, right?
I mean, Coco had a lot of good songs.
Now, right, thank you everyone for listening. Let us know what you thought of Soul.
And did you watch it on a big screen? Like, do you think it's one that we should, on another day, like, pull out our projector for, and like, is it worth putting on the big screen?
Yeah, I think
it will be.
Yeah.
And I think let's leave it a few months. Let us know what you thought. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and rate us. That would be the best Christmas gift you could ever give us. And we'll be back in a couple of days because we are, of course, going to record our best and worst movies of the year episode, which were
TV 2 episodes as always.
TV, where we've like a wealth of things to choose from.
Oh my god, this was a good year for TV.
Film,
not so much.
Being locked in a house with 2 children, can't say we've had the best film viewing year.
Well, I think there were amazing films released this year. We just didn't see any.
Honestly, we missed a lot of them because so many of the movies that came out this year didn't hit cinemas and ended up on small platforms and stuff. And like, if we were full-time film critics and had access to all the screeners, we could have watched them. But almost all of them were actually very difficult to source and watch. Yeah. And not being able to go to a cinema where we normally catch them. So anyway,
that's coming.
We have to put that list together. Sadly, I thought this movie was going to be on my list. I'm just going to say it now. It's not going to be on my top 5 of the year.
Oh, honourable mentions though.
It had a spot in there. I had reserved a spot for it, presuming it would be in my top 5. Can you believe that? Like Coco, the year Coco came out, it was either my 1 or 2, and the year Moana came out, it was my 1. I think
Moana is so rewatchable.
So, and I think the year Zootropolis might have made my top 5. So I usually have.
It did. I remember you tried to put them both on the same spot. You absolutely cheated.
So honestly, the place that it was reserved for, I now have to think what to put in. But anyway, thank you everyone for listening. Thank you, Dave, for being a wonderful husband.
Thank you.
I thoroughly enjoyed being locked into a house with you all year.
Likewise, and thank you for making me appreciate life and fresh air and breathing. And just my purpose is just to walk on quiet roads with you in windy days and talk about movies.
Right, okay.
And that's my spark.
Bye.
Okay,
Thanks.
bye everyone.
Bye.
If you want to talk to us, by the way, we forgot to say @TheCinemile on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TheCinemile @gmail.com if you want to email us, and we'll always write back.
Yeah.
Bye everyone.
Bye.
Don't miss out on the joys of life. Like pizza. I can't smell. We can't taste either?
All that stuff is in your body.
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
What would you say if I told you there's a book that can teach you how to win The Bachelor?
What would you say if I told you producers caught multiple finalists reading that book in this season that's currently airing?
What would you say if I told you the producers don't want anyone to know that their show has been compromised?
How do we know all this? We wrote that book.
I'm Lizzie Pace.
And I'm Chad Colchin.
We're the authors of How to Win the Bachelor and the hosts of the Game of Roses podcast, a bi-weekly podcast where we break down all the biggest plays, errors, and MVPs in the game of reality television.
Listen to Game of Roses wherever you get your podcasts and go to howtowinthebachelor.com to get our book.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.